The asphalt trembled like a skillet left too long on the burner. It was Tuesday, mid-July, and the sky had the cruelty of a white sheet stretched tight over the city. Carmen left the clinic early, gloves still stuffed in her lab coat pocket, the smell of alcohol clinging to her fingers. In the rearview mirror, her own eyes betrayed an old fatigue. Weeks of shifts, empty nights, a house too quiet since her mother died. On her wrist, a thin bracelet of blue beads, an old neighbor's gift, reminded her to breathe when the world pressed in. She touched the beads, inhaled slowly, and took the old state highway that ran from the capital out toward desert towns. After a while, she slowed. Ahead, near the guardrail of a narrow bridge, two figures stood still. A woman in a faded floral dress and a man in a straw hat, shadows left behind by time. Around them, two tired cloth bags, a small leather case, and a water bottle gone limp in the heat. The sun hung over them like a sentence. Carmen eased onto the shoulder. When she opened the door, the hot breath of the day hit her face, and a swirl of dust rose, clinging to her calves. The woman lifted her eyes slowly, red-rimmed, cheeks traced with dry tear tracks. The man kept his gaze on the ground, as if answers might live in the cracks in the pavement. "Good afternoon," Carmen said, not too close. "Can I help?" The woman drew a breath. Her voice broke like glass. "Our kids left us here. Said they'd be right back. 10 minutes. It's been hours." The man didn't look up. "Don't trouble yourself. They'll come. Or maybe not. We're too much weight." The words hung heavy. Too much weight. Heat rose in Carmen like a fever, but she held it down. She crouched and saw the fragile skin on the woman's hands, spotted with age, yet steady when Carmen squeezed her fingers. "My name's Carmen. I'm a doctor. You're not a burden. Let's get you out of this sun, okay?" The woman nodded. The man, wary, took longer to yield. As they stood, the hem of the dress showed swollen ankles. Carmen opened the car, gathered the bags and the case. When she tugged at the handles, she felt the man watching, protective in a way that cut. In his shirt pocket, half tucked, was a yellowed envelope, folded with care. His hand covered it instinctively. "Is it important?" Carmen asked gently. "It's everything," he said, short. "And the case, too." Their names came later, in the car, the AC fighting the desert. Beatrice and Ernest. Married 53 years, 4 children, a modest house by the market, the old dream of a small ranch. Beatrice taught first grade until her knees protested. Ernest, once a mason with columns for arms, now a faint tremor when he held the case. 3 kids nearby, the youngest, Lucia, far away, working at a hospital, calling every Sunday. When they said her name, the air inside that overheated cabin felt a little less harsh. On the way, Carmen stopped at an old gas station for cold water and electrolyte packets. The skinny kid at the counter peered through the glass and clicked his tongue in sympathy. "If I left my grandma in this heat 5 minutes, she'd haunt me forever," he said, half joking, half not. Carmen managed a brief smile and drove on. At the county hospital, the world remembered its purpose: shade, gurneys, voices. The receptionist, Paula, carmine nails, eyes that always looked like they just cried for someone, recognized Carmen from other shifts. "Did you bring the heavens today, Doc?" she asked without irony, grabbing a string of plastic wristbands. "Cooling's out again." "I brought thirst and a story," Carmen said, "and 2 tired hearts." Beatrice went to triage. High blood pressure, signs of dehydration. Ernest stayed in the waiting room, the case on his knees, Fingers clawed over the worn leather. Carmen sat beside him. For a moment, the ER clock forgot itself. A TV showed an old comedy on mute, a woman laughing with lagging captions. "Tell me slow, Ernest," he breathed, hat shoved back. "We live with the oldest, Fernando. 2 years now. At first, respect. Then the house got too small for us and his ambition. This morning he talked up a ranch, a place you'll love. Green, fresh air." We believed him. He stopped the pickup, said, "Hop out a minute while I check a tire." By the time we looked up, the dust behind them had already settled. He spoke without anger, like his body no longer saved space for indignation, only weariness. Carmen felt an echo, herself at 8, waiting at the school gate for a father who'd promised to come. Rain. A security guard took pity and lent her a broken umbrella. Her father never showed. Her mother came late, a coat on her arm, and a sorry that turned into long-term silence. Abandonment has many cousins, she thought. Beatrice returned with a paper cup of electrolytes and an effortful smile. "I didn't want to be trouble," she said, glancing around as if apologizing for her existence. "It's a phase, right?" "Phases end, Ms. Beatrice. Dignity doesn't," Paula said, joining them with an improvised paper fan. There was a story in Paula's eyes, too. A father hospitalized, a mother worn thin, a daughter who became the pillar. She fanned Beatrice the way you protect a low flame from the wind. Carmen found an observation bed. The attending internist, Dr. Alvarez, signed off on fluids. An intern, Diego, unearthed a fan. For an hour, everything was solutions: water, shade, people nearby. Then came the question that swallowed air. "And after this, doctor?" Beatrice asked, voice afraid of the void. Ernest set his jaw, but his eyes went to the envelope. A talisman. Carmen had no easy answer. Move back in with the sun. Never. A public shelter, full, far, impersonal. Pay for a room for a few days, money likely as short as shadows at noon. The hospital did what it could, until the door out. She stepped into the hall to breathe and found Paula against the wall, sending a voice note to her grandmother, promising to stop by later with sweet bread. Phone pocketed, Paula spoke plain. "When folks are this good, we have to teach them to say, 'I deserve this, Doc.' Otherwise, the world swallows them." Carmen rolled the blue beads once, twice. She thought of her big, too-quiet house, the rooms that echoed, the garden begging for hands. She thought of her mother, hard sometimes, tender at 2 a.m., and the wrinkled note she left in the kitchen drawer. Who can, stop. Whoever stops, saves. It was her mother's mantra for ambulances and souls. Back at the bed, Beatrice slept light, mouth open, breathing easier. Ernest, awake beside her, thumb tracing the envelope's edge. The silence had the weight of an empty church. "Ernest," Carmen began low. "Come stay at my place until she's stronger. I've got space. I cook a sad pot of rice, but I learned fast. My neighbor can make a real soup tonight." He looked at her with old suspicion, as if studying a bridge for invisible cracks. "We already became someone's load once," he said. "I won't do it again. The load is silence. Company divides it. My house doesn't weigh." Beatrice woke, eyes searching for Ernest. "If she's offering..." She smiled, shy. "A roof helps the body, helps the heart too." Joy pricked with fear rose in Carmen, the feeling of finding water in a desert while thunder mutters far off. Still, it was the right call, even as a stopgap. She alerted the team, arranged discharge when signs stabilized. Filling out forms, she bought popsicles from a kid pushing a cooler down the corridor for family visitors. Passion fruit, ma'am? He asked. Carmen bought 2. She handed one to Beatrice, who laughed at the cold on her tongue, her face suddenly 20 years younger. Small gestures turned tides, Carmen thought. In the parking lot, the sun had softened, the hospital copper-washed. Carmen loaded the trunk. Ernest hesitated at the curb, looking at the road, the case, the envelope. "I'll trust you," he said, though the "I will" sounded like a toad testing water before a dive. "If this goes wrong, it's on me. If it goes right, the credit's yours," she answered, opening his door. "Courage is yours." The road back felt changed. Heat loosened. The horizon took on a violet that promised breeze. An oldies station played boleros. Beatrice hummed, careful with memory. She told how she met Ernest at a plaza dance, the blue dress she wore, the exact blue of Carmen's beads, and how she feared catching the hem on a loose tile. He held out his hand and said, "I've got you," she laughed. "He's been holding me ever since." Ernest, pretending to nap, cracked one eye, pride glowing. "I still hold you. My arm just weighs more now," he teased. Carmen felt an unexpected urge to cry. She didn't. She touched the beads like tuning an instrument. The bracelet pulsed warm, as if carrying the heartbeat of every woman who'd raised her in life's hallways. They reached Carmen's neighborhood near dusk. A modest gate, tired trees shaking leaves. The garden did, in fact, plead for hands. Weeds climbed the wall, her mother's stubborn daisies, 2 still standing. Carmen opened the gate. It groaned, a repair always promised, never done. "It's small, but it's shelter," she said, a timid gesture, almost apologizing to the house itself. Beatrice took everything in like checking a dream. The wicker chair on the porch, cotton curtains, a red enameled kettle on the stove. Some houses recognize who arrives. She set the bags down, ran her fingers over the tablecloth, an old embroidery from Carmen's mother, and exhaled, as if back at a childhood beach. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ernest came last, the case pausing at the threshold, eyes scanning corners. He sat carefully, the envelope now fully visible in his hand. Carmen noticed the letters on the cover. A name, a county clerk's address, an old date. She didn't read. She respected. But she knew, without knowing why, that paper held more than ink. It held a bare nerve. She made tea, then coffee, rinsed rice, warmed oil with garlic, fried eggs for a simple farofa-style topping. The kitchen took on the smell of late afternoon blessing, and still a wind of quiet blew through the walls. The big question: what if the kids come? What if they knock? Beatrice set the cup down. The clink rang like a small bell. They'll show up, she murmured to her lap. They'll say something. They always do. Ernest swallowed hard. Carmen pretended not to hear, but her whole body heard. Bad promises have long strides. By the time the rice settled, the sky was violet. A dog barked outside. A bicycle rattled past, a far-off cheer from a pickup game. Carmen set the plates. The 3 of them ate their first meal together. Simple, warm, a pocket of peace that fits inside small things. Beatrice smiled, moved by an egg over rice as if it were a feast. Ernest gave silent thanks, hand closing over his knee. After, Carmen went to fetch blankets from the hall closet. When she opened it, old lavender spilled out, and with it, her mother's ways, folding everything into perfect squares, saving ribbons in cookie tins. She brought back 2 throws. When she returned, Ernest was standing with the envelope in his fingers. "Doctor," he said. And the word sounded different now, more intimate, not asking permission. I don't know what you think of us, but I need you to know we're not roadside trash. We have a story. He lifted the envelope. The plain bulbs lit the yellowed paper. One day I'll open this for you, when the real trust arrives. Carmen nodded slowly. At the window, a soft wind stirred the curtain. From the gate came a whisper of metal on metal, almost imperceptible. They looked at each other. The wind again. Or footsteps. Carmen went to the porch. The street was empty, but the air carried the old feeling that something moves behind the curtain before the show begins. She returned with a warning chill along her spine. Beatrice switched off the lights. The house finally breathed in gentle shadows. Ernest tucked the envelope into his inner pocket, the case at his feet. Silent sentries. Carmen stood a moment in the center of the room, blue beads cool against her wrist. She knew somehow that the envelope wasn't just memory. It was a thread tugging at future stories, the kind that once you pull, the whole skein follows. In the night hush, dogs dreaming, the sound came again. A brief scrape at the gate, a fine crack in the heart. Carmen's eyes opened in the dark. The clock read 3:11. She held her breath. Then a metallic whisper, like a doorbell pressed with guilt. She rose, bare feet on the cool floor, the blue bracelet a fresh reminder. She paused in the hall, before the door. The silence outside wasn't empty. It was a prelude. And inside, on the sideboard, the yellow envelope seemed to breathe. Morning arrived without warning. Sun struck the guest room window, laying gold stripes across Beatrice's face. She blinked, disoriented for a second, then remembered. A blender whirred somewhere. Coffee drifted from the kitchen. Ernest was already up, the case at his side. The envelope now tucked into a thick notebook, hidden between pages. Apron on, Carmen tried to persuade the stove to cooperate. The coffee climbed. The milk boiled faster than she remembered. First breakfast for 3. On the table, bread, papaya, a jar of honey she didn't recall owning. When Beatrice appeared in the doorway, pinning back her hair with her hands, Carmen smiled the way apologies sometimes hitch a ride on kindness. "Good morning, Miss Beatrice. Sleep okay?" "I did. Like I haven't in a long time. This house smells like calm, dear. More like old lavender and fear of cookware," Carmen joked. Ernest came next. Clean shirt, hat in hand. He thanked her with a small nod. For a moment, peace seemed possible. But peace after a storm always feels like alone. Even seated, Ernest kept the case by his feet and the envelope near his chest. "You know, Doc," he said, stirring coffee, "I keep this because it's all I have left of my word. Folks think old people forget easy, but it's a lie. What we remember too much." Carmen wanted to ask more, held back. Trust felt like a thin string. Still, the envelope pulsed in the house like a hidden heart. Beatrice, ever easing the air, spoke of teaching, kids arriving barefoot, chalk drying out her throat. She said Ernest built half the homes in their neighborhood, and when the children were young, they bragged about it. They'd say their father made sure no one slept outside. Today, she stopped. The silence filled in the rest. "Today you don't work," Carmen said gently. "Doctor's orders, rest and decent food." He laughed softly. "And you give the orders?" "Today I do. Tomorrow we negotiate." They laughed together. Honest laughter is a kind of pardon. Days later, the house learned to breathe with new lungs. Beatrice tended the garden, coaxing stubborn daisies back, chatting with them like old colleagues. Ernest fixed small things. The window latch, the squeaky gate, a wall clock frozen for 2 years. Carmen came home from the hospital tired, happy to find lights on and soup simmering. Sometimes she watched unseen, stunned by how 2 strangers filled the space where only loneliness used to fit. She felt something like peace, and a new fear, losing what had only just arrived. One night, with Beatrice napping on the sofa, crochet dangling from her fingers, Ernest called Carmen to the porch. Moonlight. Leaves fussed in the breeze. "Doc, remember the envelope?" "I do. It's time." He opened the notebook carefully. Inside, the paper trembled in worn hands. It wasn't just a document. It was a map to an entire life. "It's a deed," he said. "A small ranch I bought years ago. 30 acres of good land. I thought it'd be the kids' inheritance." "And it isn't because," Carmen asked, "because love isn't priced, but greed is." Ernest told her everything. The debts, the help from Lucia, the daughter who sent money from out of state and saved the property. How he and Beatrice decided to put the ranch in Lucia Hernandez Morales' name, in secret, to protect it from the others. The paper confirmed it. "She doesn't even know," he said. "We thought we'd tell her when I didn't have strength left. After what happened, I don't know if it's time for secrets or truth." Beatrice, now awake and draped in a shawl, joined them. "Tell it all, dear. The doctor deserves to know." They finished the story, the roadside betrayal, the shame, the hope tied to the daughter who never forgot. Carmen took their hands, moved. "You're not alone. If you want, we call her tomorrow." Beatrice's eyes shimmered. "You think she'll want to hear us?" "If she's who you say, she'll cross a country if she has to." Late afternoon the next day, the house phone rang. Hours earlier, Carmen had emailed Lucia, explaining she was a doctor, that her parents were with her, asking for an urgent call. When a woman's voice came through, Beatrice's heart skipped. "Mama? Papa?" trembled through the line. "It's us here." Ernest barely managed. Beatrice cried, telling her about the highway, the heat, Carmen's help. On the other end, silence filled with invisible tears. "Voy para allá," Lucia said. "I'll catch the first flight." Carmen noted the flight time, helped ready the guest room, and recognized a look in Beatrice's eyes. A shine between pain and hope, like a heart reassembling itself. Not everything would be easy. While they prepared for Lucia's arrival, Carmen noticed a dark car idling at the corner. Headlights on, engine running. She watched from the window, chest tight. The car crept away. That night, the wind carried a warning. Carmen dreamed of her father who forgot her, the 8-year-old in the rain. She woke before sunrise, sweating, and went to the porch. The horizon paled. The blue beads caught first light. She made a quiet promise. No one would be left behind on her watch. 2 days later, Carmen drove to the airport. The terminal buzzed with voices and rolling suitcases. When Lucia appeared, tired, kind-faced, steady-eyed, Carmen knew this woman carried her parents' silent strength. They hugged like old friends. "Gracias, doctora," Lucia cried. "You saved what I love most." "No, Lucia. They saved me." On the way back, Lucia spoke about life up north. Double shifts, a dream of returning someday. Now she came for love and justice. At the house, Beatrice and Ernest waited at the door. The reunion felt sacred. Beatrice swayed, arms trembling. Ernest wept without shame. Their embrace was so tender, Carmen looked away, like witnessing a private miracle. Dinner brimmed with laughter, tears, promises. But even as the table warmed, the gate scraped again. A headlight sliced the window and vanished. A chill ran through Carmen. The past, even silent, circles the block. The gate screeched again, urgent. Carmen stood before the echo faded. Outside, a black car stopped at the curb. Engine cut. The silence shouted. A tall man stepped out, suit too tight for the heat. Red face, eyes practiced in pretending. "Buenas tardes," he said, rehearsed smile. "I'm Fernando. I came to bring my parents home." Beatrice blanched. A spoon slipped, clattered. Ernest rose, hands unsteady. Lucia squared herself and stepped forward. "To bring them home or control them?" Carmen asked, steady. Fernando pretended not to hear and walked in as if the house still belonged to him. He measured the room, the clean floor, the smell of real food. "I'm sure you're well. It was a scare, a misunderstanding. Highways are dangerous. Maybe you wandered, and you forgot to come back," Beatrice cut in, bitter. "Your father nearly baked in that truck." He dodged his mother's eyes. "Enough drama. Come with me. You'll have comfort, a nurse, good meals." Ernest drew a breath. "Good meals don't cure abandonment, son." The air was thick enough to touch. Lucia stepped in, voice cool. "They're not going anywhere. They're safe here." Fernando looked at her like a rival. "Of course the sainted daughter showed up. Must be thrilled. You finally got what you wanted." Lucia didn't answer. Carmen saw the contained fury, the old wound. The man smiled crooked, turned to leave, and dropped a line that iced the room. "This isn't over." In the days after, threat hung like a loaded cloud. Carmen kept hospital hours but left her mind at home. Cars crawled by too slowly. Shadows hovered at windows. Ernest and Beatrice tried not to mention it, but fear shadowed every gesture. Lucia cared for them with tender discipline, organizing meds, cleaning the yard, setting flowers on the living room altar. Carmen watched, admiring. This woman carried the light the world kept missing. One afternoon, while Beatrice napped, Ernest called Carmen to the bedroom. He set the yellow envelope on the quilt. Time to open it. Inside, the deed. 30 acres, adobe house, fertile land. Owner, Lucia Hernandez Morales. Carmen looked up, surprised. Ernest smiled, tired. "It's how we thank the only child who never forgot us. She saved the ranch 5 years ago, paid our debts. The others only counted the money." Beatrice entered, tears quiet. "They don't know. They think it's still in our names." "And when they find out?" Carmen asked. "Let them," Ernest said without blinking. "We're not afraid anymore." That night, Lucia received the news like waking inside a dream. "Me? Owner of what?" Beatrice told it all slowly, with an open heart. Lucia cried. "I didn't do anything to deserve this." "You did everything," her father said. "Love doesn't ask for receipts." Tenderness filled the room, but fate had other business. At dawn, engines cut the calm. 2 cars, Fernando from the first, Patricia and Carlos from the second. They walked in without knocking. Carmen hurried to the living room. The trio looked carved by guilt and greed. "We came to talk," Fernando said. "At last," Beatrice answered. "Shame it's late." Carlos tried to broker, but Lucia stepped forward. "You came to talk, or claim an inheritance that doesn't exist?" Silence answered. Patricia, easiest to tears, pretended to cry. "You were always the favorite, Lucia. While we stayed here taking care of them." "Taking care?" Lucia's voice rose. "You left them to die on a highway." Fernando moved in. Watch what you say. That could have consequences. Carmen positioned herself between them. The only consequences come if you cross this door again. The scene ended in shouts, tears, and a door slam. They left a trail of threat behind. When quiet returned, Beatrice shook. They'll try to take the ranch. Let them try, Carmen said, hand over hers. You have allies now. In the weeks after, tension and hope walked side by side. Lucia decided to visit the ranch, see with her own eyes what she'd inherited without knowing. Carmen, Ernest, and Beatrice went along. The road turned to dirt and memory. The land fell open and stilled them. 30 acres of green, fruit trees, a big adobe house with blue-painted windows. The wind smelled like wet earth and old stories. Lucia walked slowly, palms on sun-warmed walls, eyes bright. It's beautiful, she murmured. It's theirs, not mine. It's ours, Ernest said. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. One day this will be your family's home, Beatrice whispered. Love will bloom here again. Carmen stood quiet, a serenity she hadn't felt in years settling in. The blue beads flashed in approval. Peace, as always, was brief. The next afternoon, Fernando returned, this time with a lawyer. Mr. Ernest, we need to review the transfer of this property, the man in gray said. There are irregularities. I'm a physician, Carmen answered, and I can attest Mr. Ernest is fully lucid. The clerk who recorded it can too. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's still room to contest. Contest all you want, Lucia said, steady. What's at stake isn't land, it's shame. We'll see you in court, the lawyer replied, closing his folder. Air went heavy. Beatrice cried quietly. Ernest held her. Justice is slow, but it arrives, he whispered. At the county courthouse, nearly noon, Carmen, in a simple dress and tired eyes, pushed through the glass doors. The hallway hummed. The AC had given up. On a wooden bench, Beatrice laced her fingers, staring into some unseeable point. Ernest, in a borrowed suit, watched the floor. Lucia paced, breathing deep. Drink some water, Mom, she said. I'll drink water. What I can't swallow is this injustice, Beatrice answered, firm. Fernando appeared with Patricia, Carlos, and the gray-suited lawyer oozing superiority. Carmen stood in front of the elders, body like a shield. There's still time to settle this as a family, the lawyer said. The family is settled, Lucia replied. All that's left is justice. The judge, a middle-aged man, kind face, tired eyes, took the bench. The hearing began. The siblings' attorney claimed Ernest lacked capacity, that he'd been manipulated, that the donation was irregular. The words were sharp but hollow. Lucia rose. Her voice was firm, accented with home. My father wasn't manipulated. He was betrayed, and my mother was left on the side of a scorching highway by the people meant to protect them. This ranch isn't an inheritance, it's repair. The judge called for quiet. He invited Ernest forward. The old man walked slowly, each step proof of the strength still there. Mr. Ernest, do you confirm you were fully capable when you signed the deed? Yes, Your Honor. I built walls, but I never lied. When I gave that land to my daughter, I was clearer than ever. I knew I was rewarding love. Why not divide it among your other children? The lawyer pressed. Ernest looked straight at Fernando. Because love isn't split evenly when a son leaves you to die by a road. Silence turned sacred. Beatrice cried without sound. Lucia bit a handkerchief. In the back, Carmen felt her heart beat to the rhythm of justice. The lawyer tried to push on. but the judge lifted a hand. "The court has heard enough. The document stands. The property remains in the name of Ms. Lucia Hernandez Morales. I recommend reconciliation, not litigation." He struck the gavel. Freedom thundered through the room. Beatrice covered her face and sobbed. Ernest smiled for the first time in a long while. Carmen exhaled, a knot loosening. Fernando bolted up. "This is theater! You've been fooled!" the judge warned him. He didn't back down. Carmen stepped close, eyes calm. The dangerous kind you learn in long corridors of pain. "The show's over, Fernando. Life starts now." He saw something in her look that made him turn away, dragging his siblings with him. Outside, sun crowned the town. Lucia hugged her parents. "It's over." "No," Beatrice said, smiling through tears. "It begins." Ernest handed Carmen a fresh envelope, crisp with the county seal. "The original deed," he said. "Keep it with me, Doc. It's safe in your hands." "It's yours," she said. "You're part of this now. Without you, none of this happens." She hesitated, then slipped the envelope into her bag, feeling the symbolic weight, more than paper, memory, promise, a life rebuilt. That night, dinner was simple and loud with joy. Lucia made empanadas. Beatrice told schoolyard stories. Ernest improvised a toast with orange juice. Carmen watched, thinking how a lonely house, once it welcomes someone, becomes a home. Near dawn, an envelope lay at the gate. Inside, shaky letters. "You think you won. I know what that paper is worth. This isn't over. F." Carmen folded the note and looked at the brightening sky. No fear, only certainty. Goodness draws retaliation. Light refuses to dim. "Let come what comes," she whispered. "The road is long." Time moved like a strong wind, sweeping, clearing, leaving marks. Months after the verdict, the ranch bloomed. The adobe house once shadowed, learned to breathe laughter and warm bread. Silence became calm. Lucia cared for her parents with method and tenderness. Mornings began with coffee on the porch and hens gossiping in the yard. Beatrice, always in the blue chair, knit lavender-scented blankets. Ernest grew slower, happy to inspect each new seedling. Carmen, now officially part of the family, split her days between the hospital and the ranch. Sundays she brought books, read to Beatrice, and they ate under stars. The blue bracelet glowed brighter, as if holding the echo of all these intertwined lives. Rumors still drifted, cars circling at night, a stranger asking for the old couple. Carmen stayed alert. She'd learned that, once beaten, malice often returns dressed as remorse. One afternoon, returning from the hospital, she found Ernest at the gate with a childlike calm. "Waiting for Mr. Fernando?" she teased. "No," he smiled. "Waiting for peace. I think it got here first." "How do you know it's peace?" "Because it doesn't make noise, and when it arrives, even the wind behaves." The ranch prospered. Lucia turned a shed into a greenhouse, sold flowers and vegetables at the market. Neighbors came to buy and stayed for coffee and stories. They called it La Finca de los Milagros. Time, generous, gave them 3 quiet years. Laughter, harvests, new friends. Then Ernest's body began to tire. The cardiologist pulled Carmen aside. "His heart is failing. Prepare them." She prepared. No one ever is. On the morning Ernest left, sunlight pooled on the quilt, and Beatrice held his hand. "Gracias, mi amor," he whispered, "for everything." Carmen was there. She vowed the grief wouldn't undo what they'd built. The burial was simple. Half the town came. Carmen spoke. He didn't just leave land. He left an example. The ranch is his, but what he planted in us doesn't die. The courage to love after betrayal. Beatrice listened quietly, tears dampening her scarf. Months crawled. Beatrice dimmed, a flame knowing its mate. When she too departed, Lucia dressed her in the same floral dress she wore the day Carmen found them by the road. At the vigil, the town said, "They left together, like old trees falling hand in hand." Carmen helped with everything. At dusk, after laying them side by side, she stood before the stones. Here rest Beatrice and Ernest. They sowed love, they harvested justice. She smiled through tears. Now you're home. Life steadied. Lucia's grandson, Mateo, ran the rows, talked to chickens, laughed loud. Each year, on their birthdays, Carmen and Lucia planted a tree. "One for every lesson they left us," Lucia said. "Tia Carmen," Mateo asked once, "why do you do this if you're not family by blood?" "Because the heart has its own blood," she said. Years turned, slow and kind. Carmen aged in peace. Lucia grew the ranch into a sustainable farm and a refuge for elders in the valley. She called it La Casa del Sol, after the afternoon hope rose from highway heat. They renovated the adobe, but left the old wall clock stuck at the minute Carmen chose to stop the car. One December night, ripe mango scent on the wind, Carmen, white-haired now, gathered everyone on the porch. Lucia, Mateo, and his young wife, Adriana, drew close. The moon silvered the fields. "Promise me something," Carmen said softly. "When I go, lay me beside them." "That's been promised for years, Hermana," Lucia said, holding her hand. Carmen smiled. "Then I can rest." It was the last night she stayed up late. At dawn, Lucia found her serene, face light, the blue beads still shining. The funeral was a quiet celebration. On Carmen's stone, Lucia had engraved the words Carmen always carried. "Here rests Carmen, the woman who stopped." People in town added, "the doctor who changed destinies." The ranch lived on. Mateo took the lead. His children grew up on the story. Every spring the garden bloomed a little earlier, as if Beatrice, Ernest, and Carmen still walked there, tending what they'd left. On some full moon nights, folks swore they saw 3 silhouettes on the porch, 2 elders and a white-haired woman between them. Skeptics called it imagination. The tender-hearted called it love. And so the story repeats, not as pain, but as lesson. Kindness doesn't get lost. Justice arrives, even late. Family is sometimes chosen along the way, and it takes a single instant of courage, the moment you stop, to change the course of many lives. The time that carries all things away also keeps what deserves to remain. And in the heart of that old ranch, true love never stopped flowering. This story reminds us that true energy comes from within, the kind that renews us every day. If this story touched your heart, check the pinned comment to discover products that inspire renewal and balance. Leave a like and subscribe to join us in our next story.